What's going on, everybody? You are back with another Soundbite studio session. This is KJ Kearney, James Beard Award winning social media influencer and the founder of Black Food Fridays. And today I have a treat. I don't know if you think this is a treat. It's a treat for me. And it's my podcast, so I can do whatever I want. Mr. Alexander Smalls is here. You may know him from his most recent book, The Contemporary African Kitchen. But he has another book coming out. We're going to get into that a little bit later. Mr. Smalls, you have done so many things, from opera, from restaurants, these pop-up dinners that you're doing. You've written, well, this is what, your fifth book, correct? The
Yeah,
children's book will be your fifth
fair
book.
book.
When people ask you to describe yourself or what do you do, how do you answer the what do you do question?
It's probably the hardest question I've ever asked. I'd rather you ask me my name. You
That's
know,
fair.
if I were in its truest form, and certainly that question is answered for me personally by simply saying I'm an artist.
Mm.
I've always been an artist. I understand who I am and the world through, um, the gaze of an artist. Um, and I'm an artist that's mission driven. When I was a youngster, it was creating visibility
Mm.
on the classical operatic stage, where I saw a void of African American men. And essentially, I felt we had so much to say in that arena. But also, as I grew and also experienced, you know, racism, discrimination, and essentially not really making a place for me to exist as an opera singer on a global stage. Um, I s- switched basically to my second love, which was, cooking, the culinary arts, a place where I learned as a child to express who I was, my identity, and also my passion. Um, and I sought to then transition into, again, another difficult, challenging space, but to recognize that our culinary had a place at the table and it wasn't being served.
I
So,
like how you worded that. Our culinary had a place at the table, but it wasn't being served. Sir, do you know how to not speak in poetic phrases? Because that's a good one. Now, I know the book, the children's book, does talk about sort of like your relationship with food as a child. Am I correct?
yeah, yeah,
Okay. So where did let me just ask this question before we even get into that. Because this, first of all, let me just say thank you so much for sending me this book. This is the one that's shrink wrapped, right? But I
yeah.
bought one of the books and I have all of your books. And I just
Thank
want to
you.
know real quick, why are you so obsessed with taking my money, brother? Like, why has it been your mission to find ways to get money out of me, especially now with this children's book, which I'm excited to talk to you about? I think it's a wonderful pivot. So I want to know your mindset from going from something like this right into a children's book. uh why go, I'm not going to say step down, but why take a pivot from, from in a literary sense, to go from like a big old thick old cookbook and to a children's book?
I've been writing that children's book all my life. That's where I came from. That is the true essence of who I am, that little boy inside who essentially forms the foundation of who I am. That book was personal. It was also, it was a gift to my parents. I was so fortunate to have a loving, loving family, parents who the greatest gift they ever gave me was they didn't say no. If you could imagine a young kid coming home and essentially remember, my parents were World War II survivors, if you will, from that sort of mentality. And they had bought into the concept that education was going to rescue their little black babies, in South Carolina, where I grew up. And so um, anything that I needed with respect to education was made available. They were training me to be a doctor, lawyer, maybe the first black president, but an opera singer. And I came home and announced that, and my parents were paralyzed by the concept. A, nobody they knew sang opera, nobody
Mm,
looked like them sang opera. And two, I was talking about being an entertainer.
hmm
That was not something that they were grooming me for.
hmm
And so the greatest gift they ever gave me is they never said no, which is expressed in this children's book because the other gift they gave me was to push me and tell me it was time to do something that I wanted to do, that I needed their support, encouragement. And
mm.
at that particular moment, it was to make the dessert for Sunday dinner for my dad and my grandpa, which was a huge honor because I don't have to tell you that Sunday dinner is everything
Absolutely,
in the
absolutely.
Southern household.
Next to the potato salad and the big piece of chicken, whoever making dessert better be on point.
On point. so, so that's the book is really about courage, confidence, nurturing, encouragement. The book is about love, the love you give to others and you give to yourself. And so much is expressed in that little book with that little boy and that amazing family that gathered to support and hold him up and crown him little king.
Oh, I love this. This is amazing. And if I may, I want to draw some parallels at my own risk, but I want to draw some parallels from your life as a child growing up in South Carolina at the time that you were growing up, coming home and telling your parents, "I want to be an opera singer." It resonates with me today because I used to work in public education,
Yeah.
and I remember I worked in an elementary school, and I had a parent teacher conference, and one of my parents was like, "Mr. Kearney, I need you to talk some sense into my son because my son is telling me that he wants to be a YouTuber, and I need you to tell him that's not a real job. Like he need to get his books, you know what I'm saying, getting these books and go to college and da 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 da." And I said, "Bam, respectfully, he could make more money than all of us, right? Like it's a different time now, so." What your parents did for you, I don't take it lightly because I've seen parents in their attempt to protect their children. Let me be clear.
Sure,
It's not that they're trying
sure.
to, they're not purposely trying to crush their children's dreams, but especially being black in the South, especially being a
Absolutely.
black boy in the South, right? Protection is key. So shout out to your parents. And that has resonated into you doing a lot of marvelous things. As it relates to the children's book, another thing I want to know, let's talk about the illustrations because the samples I've seen,
Wow.
they look like the portrait from Good Times, like the in the club, right? Like that's the vibe I got from the cover. But let's talk about the illustrations a little bit. What can
They
you
are
share?
brilliant. The illustrations are brilliant. First of all, what you have to understand is Frank Morrison is a fine, fine artist. He is an extraordinary painter. And, I wrote the book with Deneen Milner, and we waited for 2 years for this illustrator because it spoke to my heart. He he paints rhythm and movement into all of his characters, which is who I am, music and food and lyricism. And he just captured that just from the story and what he knew of my background. It's really a brilliant, brilliant assemblage of visuals that I cherish.
Yeah.
Um, and he even managed to catch the precociousness and the clown in me. Because it's funny as a kid, my mother used to tell people, oh, I don't need an entertainment center. I have my son. That's all the entertainment I need.
Right, right, right. I
Yeah,
love the way that you described him and his work, which is why the whole Good Times thing makes sense, right? Because of the movement that is captured,
yeah,
the rhythm and movement that is catching. I just want him to know, if he's listening, I did not pay Mr. Smalls to say that. Alexander said that out of the kindness of his heart. He truly believes that, sir. So take that to the bank.
Oh, it's real. It's
Yeah,
real, my friend. He is
as
tremendous. And listen, I hope I don't have to wait 2 years for the next one.
I was just about to say, have you moved to the front of the line now?
Listen, all I know is I'm ready to do it again.
Right,
Okay,
right.
I'm lining up the titles, and let's keep it going, Frank, wherever you are.
Listen, I have a suggestion for you. This is merely a suggestion, okay?
Yeah.
All right. I was talking to a good friend of mine. She's based in Savannah. You may know her. Her name is Cheryl Day, the baker. And I told Cheryl, I said, my goal in life, if I could, one of my goals in life would be to create a black food version of like Dr. Seuss, of Mr. Rogers, right? Like there is no seminal figure that little kids can look up to and read and learn from as it relates to food, because by the time you get to middle school, high school, you're kind of jaded. And if you come around when you get 20 or 30, God bless. But like when children are small and their minds are malleable, that's when we need to introduce this black food information.
Absolutely.
And
I
I think
couldn't
your
agree
book is
more.
doing that.
I couldn't agree more. And given the opportunity, I would jump at it. And because I feel that it's also very, very important. I mean, my generation, as you know, we had Uncle Ben and Aunt Jemima, and that's as far as it went. Somebody on a box.
That's real. That's real.
When there could have been so much more. And
Hmm.
organically speaking, it makes perfect sense. Essentially because not only did we grow all the food, we fed everybody.
Mm,
I mean, that's
mm,
really part of our legacy. I grew up in a family on my father's side. Two of his siblings were chefs, or in those days considered cooks.
hmm,
My aunt Daisy and my uncle Joe. And my uncle Joe, interestingly enough, and his wife Aunt Laura, who was a classical pianist, the
mm,
two of them shaped and molded my life. Really, they were the secret ingredient in how I became Alexander Smalls
mm.
with recipes and songs. Those
Absolutely.
two people, he taught me how to dream and have conversations through food. He was so creative. He was able to just take the simplest ingredients and create, classical expressions.
Mm,
And of course, she was my piano teacher. They taught me Shakespeare. I started me off in classical music. I was listening to Renata Tebaldi and Maria Callas and all of these extraordinary singers, Corelli, Caruso, when I was a kid.
mm,
And so it all shaped who I am. And through the children's books, if I am allowed, I'd like to create those things for children.
mm. I mean, listen, you don't put it out there in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
I wish for it. You just said it. It must be so now. We're gonna have to make it so. But yeah, like I could 100% see. I have a 7-year old nephew, and I have some, nieces and nephew that are younger than 7. I could see them growing up and being like, "Oh yeah, Mr. Alexander, that was the food guy, right?" Like the, the way, like my 7-year old nephew doesn't think of Mariah Carey in any sense outside of Christmas,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like he has no reference of anything but Christmas. And in this next chapter and journey of your life, when you do in these children's books, I could see there be a whole generation of children who know who you are, but don't know anything about the opera stuff, don't know
Right.
about the restaurants, right? They're just going to be like, oh, yeah, Mr. Small's books. I grew up with those books. So, how many ideas for books do you think, children's books, do you have in your head right now?
Oh gosh, we'd be here all day. Truly, trust and believe. I have so many, but I love what you were saying because for them, it won't matter the accolades in culinary arts. Both you and I share a James Beard Award. That won't matter either. It'll be,
Absolutely.
and nothing would please me more, quite frankly. Um, I look at my career and it's been a career about starters. It's been a career about being where we weren't supposed to be. whether it's the opera or, interestingly enough, almost 35 years ago, I opened the first, creative uh, Black owned boutique concept, fine dining, where I translated soul food through the lens of fine dining and started or was a part of starting a revolution, essentially. What made me, and I learned this from being in classical music, ownership is everything. I couldn't own an opera house, but I could own a restaurant. And I
That's
could
real.
do in that restaurant what I felt was missing in the landscape of who we were as Black people. And when I decided I was opening a fine dining African American restaurant, everybody thought I had lost my mind, including Black folk. And the extraordinary thing about that is I had traveled the world. I understood that we weren't in those conversations. Our food had been denigrated and passed over.
Mm,
You tell me that my grandmother's brown pan gravy is inferior to the French grandma's heavy cream and butter gravy. Come
mm,
on now. And they're going to tell us our food is bad for us. And so, in pursuit of all of that, we needed positive recognition and affirmation
mm,
through the most valued trust that we as Black folks have, which is
mhm,
our culinary expression.
mhm.
Because food for us is currency. When we didn't own ourselves, we owned that dish, we owned that recipe. It was how we showed love, it's how we had pride and dignity. It was all we had.
Right.
And you want to take that too? No.
Not on your watch.
No, baby.
I wanna just say again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk with me. This will not be the last time we talk,
No.
obviously. Um, but I want you to let the people know, when does the book come out? How can they purchase it? And where else can they find you on the internet?
Well, as it turns out, ta-da! I have the book. The book comes out January 7th. It is a Deneen Milner imprint on Simon Kids. That's Simon and Schuster. And grab some. Every kid should have one of these because it's a real special tribute and recognition to the power of kids and their beliefs and how we give them their start in life.
Amen. And if people want to find you, where can they find you, sir?
Well, they should, if when they pick up the book, send me a note on Instagram. I'm very active on Instagram. They can always find me there. Drop in my DM, tell me how much they like the book. And um, I have the only restaurant I have right now is in Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
I opened the first African dining hall in the world for Expo 2020 4 years ago,
Yeah.
22,000 square feet. And it's a celebration of African food. In fact, it was the idea seeded that brought forth the Contemporary African Kitchen that came out last month, my book.
Listen, what I'm hearing, sir, is we need to do a Black Food Fridays field trip to Dubai
Hello.
so we can eat at your restaurant with you. I'm dead ass. We gonna talk about this because I mean, if you gonna take a trip, why not take a trip like that? You know what I'm saying? Like, why
And we
not?
can stop off in Ghana or Nigeria on the way over or
Come on
back.
now.
Hey, it could be quite an event.
Listen, this is a TV show. Let's stop talking. Let's not give out our ideas. All right, there's too much intellectual property. We just give it away for free. Thank y'all for listening. Thank you for watching. Again, Mr. Alexander Smalls. His new book comes out on January 7th. I'm KJ Kearney. Black Food Fridays. And if you're watching this on the Friday, make sure you go find a Black-owned food or beverage company to support. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Smalls.
you. Thank you, KJ. Appreciate it.